Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back. It's Jordan here. Today we're going to be building the mountain that's going to go behind the zoo, and we're also going to add the raised platform behind the mountain, which is going to support the Ninjago district. I'm really excited about this project because it's going to give the zoo more space, and it's just going to provide the background, and it's the start of the mountain, which is going to be one of the biggest projects here in the new Lego city, because this mountain is going to run through the entire center of the city, and it's going to be a focal point. The first thing I need to do is construct the wood platform. Luckily for me, I've got a bunch of wood, so all I did is just grab some of the 3/4 inch melamine. The reason I use the 3/4 inch stuff is because it's like super strong. It's pretty much the thickest that you can get this material in, and I don't have to support it with a wood frame underneath. All I have to do is just use some legs and screw those in, and there you go. I've got a nice platform which is going to very easily support the Ninjago district. I used 6 legs and I just did a small section of wood. My thought is I want to try and keep this as modular as possible. So if I need to make some changes to this platform, or if I need to make changes to all of the platforms once they're installed, it's going to be easier to do that if the pieces of wood are relatively small and easy to maneuver. Now, the nice thing about the legs that I use is they're actually the same legs that I had in the existing city, so they match up perfectly with the raised platform coverings. So now I can reuse some of these raised platform coverings. As you can see, they pretty much line up perfectly. Once I slap a Mills plate or the Ninjago district on top of that platform, then it's just going to line up beautifully with the platform covering. So now I've got this big span of base plates just behind the zoo there, and that's where I plan on building this cliff edge, or the start of the mountain. It's going to be huge. Every single one of these 48 by 48 grade plates is going to have to be modular and have part of the mountain. So it's going to be an interesting build. It's going to provide the zoo more structure. And once again, it's the start of the mountain, which is just so exciting in my opinion. But now I've just got to transport these upstairs, figure out how I'm going to do this, and it's pretty much going to be all off the top of my head. So grab my 48 by 48 plates. I'm going to grab some 16 by 16 green plates and a whole bunch of 2 by 2 multicolored brick. And I'm going to start constructing my Mills plates. Now the Mills plates are actually going to be 3 bricks up off the ground. The reason they have to be 3 bricks up off the ground is because these are going to go right up against the back of the zoo. And the zoo actually has 3 bricks of elevation in it. So I got to build these at the same height, because then my mountain can sort of take off at the same height as the zoo. So yeah, that's the first thing I've got to do, is just create the Mills plates using the 16 by 16 plates. I use all of my green ones and a lot of my dark gray ones as well. I want to use green because that's the color of grass. Dark gray is all right too, because that's the color of the mountain, at least the base of it. And now I'm going to start laying out some of the rectangular rock panels. I have a lack of these because I've built and destroyed so many different mountains, and I have a lot of experience of working with these. I really do like them. They provide a nice structure for a mountain. They just get you up there quite quickly, and that's the reason I like using these for the base construction of my mountains. Flip around this side here, you can see the face of those rectangular rock panels. Now I lock them all together, but I'm making sure not to lock in the 48 by 48 plates, because I want each one to be its own entity. So if I have to change something, or if I have to move these, it's very easy to do. So I got my first layer done, and now I'm starting to work on my second layer. And I'm using some of the supports that I used to support my train track with way back in the day to provide structure for the backside of these rock panels. Now I don't want this to be one big rectangular block. I want this mountain to have, different like cliff edges and like pieces that are inset and pieces that aren't all at the same uniform depth on the plate. So I'm trying to do that. Although the rock panels, I do realize they look uniform. I do understand that it is sort of cheating using these rock panels, but once again, I've got to go up such a high distance and I've got so much ground to cover. That's why I'm using these rock panels. I've got them in my inventory. I may as well use them. And once I throw a ton of slopes at them and different pieces and different colors, they end up actually looking pretty good. That's pretty much the first plate done there. I've just got to go through and lock some of those rock panels together using dark bluish gray bricks, also corner bricks, and some plate. So this is what we've got going on so far. As you can see, there is a section that sort of like goes in. It's almost like a cavern. I just wanted to give this mountain some texture, so that looks pretty good. There's also a couple like ledges where those rock panels are inset, a number of studs. It's completely modular, so each plate will be separate. That's the plate that's going to be to its left, and then we've got the other plates to the right here. So the base layer of them should all match up there. I'm going to build them individually, so as I go through and make them, I just got to make sure that they all line up as well. So I like having them all on my desk here, and I think before I go any further, I've got to try and test fit this in the city. If I flip around the back here, you can see some of the support structure. It's not very pretty, not pretty at all, but it does provide enough support. And if I need to go through and add more support and push some things down that didn't get pushed down to begin with, I can definitely do that. Very easy to modify the backside of these rock panels, but they don't really have to support very much weight, so the skeleton structure should work there. So yeah, definitely got to test fit this. Just got to make sure it looks good behind the zoo, and also just make sure that we're building it, to the right specs of the spot that I want it in. For example, is it tall enough? Is it going to match up with the platform? How is it going to look behind the zoo? Can we integrate the animal enclosures into this rock panel? Just all these different things. I may as well bring it down here just to see how it looks in its position before I get too carried away with the build. There is this corner here. I'm going to have to try and figure out what's going on with this corner because that's leaking into the countryside, which will make it a little bit more difficult. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the outcome of the first section of mountain here, and I'm ready to continue with the others. The base layer is already done, so I just need to continue up from there. Now, these rock panels are actually 10 studs wide. These base plates are 48 studs, so you're forced to fill in 8 studs with brick, which is all right because that just allows you to add more texture and more dimension to it anyway. But once again, they're going to get covered with slopes. I'm going to count how many times I say that throughout this video because I know that's going to be the number one concern, is the fact that these look like rectangular rock panels, which I 100% do realize. But we're working on the next one here. So this is sort of like the midsection of the zoo. And I added one of the corner pieces on the far right there, and also a ledge on the far right as well. If you look at the second rock panel up, you'll see on top of that, there are a bunch of studs there. I'm just doing that with some additional plate. And then I'm filling in the 8 additional studs with some of the brick. Sometimes I put all those studs together, so I just custom build 8 studs of it with the dark bluish gray brick. But sometimes I like space it out between the rock panels. Just really depends on how it's looking and how it sits next to the other section of mountain beside it. But just like that, I've got the second section of mountain complete. And now it's time to do the exact same thing to the third section. So I'm actually starting this one off a little bit differently. I'm not going to stack more rock panels on top of the first layer. I'm actually going to use some plates. So I'm going to create that cliff effect on the first layer of rock panels. So I've actually transitioned it to be different from all three. The first one had that cliff on the third rock panel, I think. The second one on the left side of the screen there has it on the second rock panel up. And then this one here has a hybrid. It's the second rock panel up and also the first rock panel up. And then I just have to do some blending work with some bricks and stuff just to make sure that the 2 plates, so the 2 different rock faces, are going to match up. And once again, I could do that with all of the different slopes and everything, because once I start blending all of these rock panels in, I'm going to make sure that the rock faces on the separate 48 by 48 plates also blend together as well. Wow, look at that. It's a pretty big rock face, that's for sure. Doesn't that look cool? You can see what I mean though, how I tried to stagger them. So there's a little bit of depth, sometimes the mountain is sticking out further on the base mills plate, sometimes it's in deeper, the rock panels are at different depths as well, so we have the cliffs on the bottom or on the second tier or on the third tier, so those cliffs are at different depths and also at different heights. So even though I'm working with rectangular pieces, I try to make it look a little bit unique. And something that'll take it over the top, of course, is when I put all of these slopes on there as well. That entire drawer will get used on this mountain. You saw the front side there. Here's the back side. It's very colorful. I used a whole bunch of 2x2 brick, 2x6 brick, 2x4 brick, and then once again those black support pieces as well. This backside is hollow. I don't think it really needs to be mills plated. And if I need to reinforce certain sections, not very hard to just, put a tower together and stick it underneath one of the rock panels anywhere, really, if I want to connect them together, whatever it may be. But I've been pushing on it and reinforcing it, and it's actually pretty sturdy. You might be wondering why I've been voiceovering everything, if you could tell. That's because I'm jamming. Got some sick music going on in the background there. I couldn't pause it. Hey, we haven't had a look at the Lego city from this perspective in a minute, when you have a look at it from here, that beach really stands out. That water just looks fantastic. I love that. What a great way to start the city, with the nice colorful water and the sand and the beach and the boatyard. the downtown core, the zoo behind. I just really like that. And I also really like the start of these mountains. Man, I tell you, I think they're looking pretty good so far. And that's just like the first tier of mountain. We're gonna go up probably double, maybe even triple that height. But that's the first platform of height that I wanna work from. And I think those look pretty good behind the zoo. Once again, I mean, we've gotta add some color to them. We've gotta add some slopes and just some more detail to it. But I just want to test fit it before I get too far ahead of myself, because you imagine if I didn't test fit it and then I'm like, oh no, this isn't right. This doesn't line up. Uh-oh, I just added 3,000 slopes and locked in all these rock panels, and now we've got to change it. So I'd rather that not happen, and that's why I'd rather just place it 15 times before I start adding all of those pieces, just because it takes a long time to add all those pieces, and it's sort of disheartening when you have to rip it apart to make a slight modification. But I think the test fit is going well. Something that's making it a little bit difficult to visualize as well is just the sheer amount of dark gray in this area. It does not look very lively at all. It looks very drab and very boring, but believe me, that's going to change. The zoo is not going to remain dark gray. I just decided to build these massive mills plates for the zoo using dark gray because that's what I had the most of. A lot of it's going to get tiled over, plated over, or just swapped out for different colors like this tan right here. And when I do that, it's really going to, change the color of it. There's not going to be as much dark gray. So the dark gray mountain behind it won't look as dark gray. This area won't look as boring. And also the mountain isn't going to remain all dark gray. We're going to add vegetation, and we're going to add the greens and the browns and the tans and the light grays and stuff like that. This just, once again, is the base foundation. But I'm glad that I test fitted it here just to see how it's going to line up with the zoo. So I'd imagine a lot of these enclosures are going to continue onto the mountain, and we'll have to fence some of them off on the mountain, similar to how my bird aviary used to be. I need to figure out how I'm going to address this corner now, but that's going to require me to figure out what this area is going to look like. Is this going to be a green hill leading up to the mountainous backdrop of the zoo? Because I want to mix in a bunch of green brick along with the dark gray. I don't want this mountain to all be one color. There's going to be whites, there's going to be greens, there's going to be gray sections. It's just going to be a different type of terrain absolutely everywhere, all over this thing, right? Because over here is going to be more so this slanted green hill that's going up toward the mountain peak, and then this side it's more mountain. On that side it's mountain and green leading to the raised platform coverings. And then way back there, it's going to be snow. It's going to be white. So there's going to be all sorts of different types of mountains, but it's going to be one big mountain, if that makes sense. I guess this area here will actually be a continuation of the zoo, but I've got this weird 16 studs coming off this mills plate here. So I'll have to figure out how I'm going to treat this area and how I'm going to finish wrapping the mountain around. I also need to decide if I'm just going to slide this forward. That wasn't me, that was the wood. If I'm going to slide this forward and then just bridge this, I'll probably do that. The raised platform will just go over top of the 48 by 48 plates a little bit because I don't need that much space. But I'm glad I did it on the 48 by 48 plates just because it makes these modules larger and easier to move. And then what I'll do is I'll bridge across here, and then we'll put, I believe, Ninjago City on top, and build like a large canal around Ninjago City. And then I'll have to plot in where the waterfall is going to come down on this side into the bird aviary, and then also where the waterfall is going to come down that side into the canal. And then once again, I just have to work all of this space here into the actual enclosures. That's why I decided to use green, because it makes sense having grass there, because it's part of the animal enclosures. I actually decided to leave this side not constructed on purpose because I knew these platform coverings were going to be coming up here, but I'm thinking this should probably be the corner of the mountain. The water should come down here, feed into the canal, and then we can transition into the platform coverings. I just think that makes sense. And once again, I can pull this over so it's right up against those platform coverings. So I guess I do need to create the corner of the mountain right there, and then one of the exhibits right here will be like the penguins up against the mountain as well. And then I just need to figure out how to fence off the zoo from the mountain. It'll probably be a continuation of this reddish brown fence, and it'll actually creep up. So before I add all of the slopes and everything on the mountain and cover up all of these studs that are available, I need to make sure that I get the framework of it done, then create the outline for the zoo that continues onto the mountain, and make sure not to attach the framework of the zoo from this plate onto the 48 by 48 plates of the mountain. So just like getting the schematics of everything correct just takes a little bit of planning, a little bit of thought, a lot of trial and error, but I think we're off to a terrific start. Like, I think this is awesome. Actually, looks like I came up a little bit too high like a brick, but I don't think that's the end of the world because I can actually blend it down, and that will actually provide a nice depth effect to the water around Ninjago, because now we're going to be up a brick or two, and then we can add the water, or just, add water around the modular buildings, and that'll just give us a nice depth. So I think that actually works out for the better. That's a happy accident right there. This will be a little bit more tricky because I have to go around a corner, do a 90-degree turn, and it has to match up with the platform covering as well. So first things first, build that mills plate. I ran out of dark bluish gray, like large plates. So I didn't put them in the front or the back. But either way, I want to give this a unique shape. I don't want it just to turn like a regular old corner. So you can see I used one of the corner pieces in the corner, and then I also used one to the right of that further down the plate toward the platform covering. And then I can just sort of fill that in with some plate and some brick, add some supporting brick in the back side of it, sort of follow that shape, but also add some cliff edges so they're inset a few studs in some areas. Sometimes those rock panels are right on top of each other. Sometimes they're inset 2 studs. Sometimes they're inset 6 studs. And then I just play around with the corner ones and the rectangular ones, that being the rock panels, and just try to create a really cool looking corner which will accommodate the waterfall that flows into the canal. And eventually I end up just topping the whole thing so that I can create a nice cliff edge there and then continue up with my rock panels. And then once I just continue to slap more pieces on there and just lock all those rock panels together, I'm pretty happy with the outcome. So here we go. This is the corner. I think it looks pretty good. It should blend together well with those platform coverings, and it also blends together well with the other piece of mountain. And you can see the backside there, so some more support structure, plate and brick, and those old train supports. And I really like the way that these look when they're side by side. It looks pretty cool. Here's what the corner looks like placed in the Lego City. I already know that I'll have to do some blending here between the raised platform covering and also the mountain. Just transition that nicely. I'll also have to add the waterfall, and I'll do that when I go around and add the 50,000 slopes. Not quite 50,000, but you know what I mean. So we'll have the water flow down into the canal. I put the Venetian houses back here. I put some water plates right back here as well. I'm not sure how this canal is going to work in this area, but I'll get to that when I actually start transitioning the water from up top here down to the canal itself. And you know what? There you go. I placed the Ninjago buildings up there. Just the Ninjago City, then the Ninjago Markets. Yeah, I think that's the big one they just released not too long ago. And also the Ninjago Gardens. So there you go. We got the Ninjago buildings up there. I think they look pretty cool. And I think this mountain is serving the zoo quite nicely. It actually is going to expand the zoo too, which is nice. Like specifically here, look at all the extra real estate the zoo is going to get, which is good because then I can play around with this aquarium and the different enclosures in this area as well. As I've been working on the Lego City, I've made sure to level off my tables using shims and metal fasteners, and I did a bunch of that today. And here's what the mountain looks like from the back side. When you peer underneath the raised platform there, you can see all the structural work. And I actually need to make more of these platforms, but I'm just going to make them in smaller modules like that in case I decide to change it. So I've got more lumber that will allow me to do that, and I'm just going to proceed to build these all the way back and around the corner. And I also need to add a second tier to some of the larger ones. Of course, that second tier is not going to be as wide. It's going to go in the center and will be a little bit narrower, whatever that measurement may be. I'm not sure. Maybe it's one of these base plates or something like that. yeah, who knows what the top of the mountain is going to look like. I still need to figure out how I'm going to blend this side here, but I think I also need to start working on the green gradient here as well, just so I know exactly what this is going to look like. Luckily for me, it's all individual modules, so I'm just not going to touch that module for now, and I can go through and add all my details to this mountain in the zoo portion and also like in the aviary, and I can start framing in all the different zoo walls and everything as well. So yeah, at least I can just work on them individually now, because I know for the most part they all line up. Of course, there is like things like that need to be blend in better. Like that doesn't really look that good, but once I add the slopes, it will blend in quite nicely. And I really do think it's sort of exactly what I was visualizing. It's adding some height to the Lego city, and we're gonna add even more in the future. I think if that mountain runs through the entire center there, it's gonna look pretty sweet. And then that gradual incline on the countryside up to the mountain will look even better than having the raised platform coverings. I think it's going to be super cool to build. And this is just the start of that process. This is the first video and the first day of me working on the new mountains here in the Lego City. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on by. Please remember to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for some more great stuff coming out in the very near future. Farewell.